Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandanam Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa, Padujikacharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padujikacharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Ramacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda ki Jai. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on this 29th day of March 2020 in San Diego, speaking on Sunday night during the time of the coronavirus plague. Unfortunately, we can't have any guests here in the temple, but whoever's out there online, welcome. And tonight we're going to be speaking a little bit first from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 14. And this verse talks about the power of the holy name, and especially to save one from all fear. So some of you may know this verse. I think you may know it. Apanak sangstutim ghoram yannama vivishogvanam tatak sadyovamucheta yadmabeti swayam bhayam. Apanak sangstutim ghoram yannama vivishogvanam tatak sadyovamucheta yadmabeti swayam bhayam. Translation: living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Srila Prabhupada's purport: Vasudeva, O Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the supreme controller of everything. There is no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Great asuras or demons like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others, who were very powerful living entities, were all killed by the personality of Godhead. And the Almighty Vasudeva has empowered his name with the powers of his personal self.
Everything is related to him and everything has its identity in him. It is stated herein that the name of Krishna is feared even by fear personified. This indicates that the name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Therefore, the name of Krishna is as powerful as Lord Krishna himself. There is no difference at all. Anyone, therefore, can take advantage of the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna, even in the midst of the greatest dangers. The transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, in these times in which suddenly we're faced with unexpected danger, and there's a palpable sense of dread throughout the whole world, suddenly, because of this danger that's come from the coronavirus, I thought it would be good to focus on some of our basic philosophy concerning the power of the holy name. This is, after all, the Hare Krishna movement, because it's based on the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Srila Prabhupada, following in the line strictly of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, emphasized and indeed built a whole movement around the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra. And this is the 14th verse in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, and already we find the glorification of the holy name, and that will continue throughout the Bhagavatam. Especially in this age, which is a difficult age, where it says, Kala doshanade rajan, asti eko mahad gunat, kirtanadiva krishnasa mukta sangam param vajet. That this age of Kali is an ocean of faults. And whereas in other ages, other processes were for self-realization, God-realization were emphasized. In this age, practically we're not qualified to practice anything like Ashtanga Yoga or any great austerities. But the concession has been given, the Yuga avatar has come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he spread the love of Godhead freely through the chanting of the holy names. And here we find one very nice effect of the holy name, and that is Yad Babeti Swayam Bayam. That because the name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna, and Krishna is all-powerful, and we know from his pastimes how he killed so many demons who were very, very powerful in themselves. Prabhupada mentions 3 of them, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and Kamsa. So he's feared by fear personified. And this means that we can take shelter of Krishna through the chanting of the holy name and feel the wonderful soothing blessings of the holy name, alleviating our anxiety and our fear. As we know, we're aiming to go to Vaikuntha. We want to go to Vaikuntha, back home, back to Godhead. Vaikuntha means that place free from all anxiety. So this material world is a very dangerous place, and I wanted to share one other verse with you. And this is a famous one from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, in which Shukadeva Goswami is giving kind of a summary or explaining the significance of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, which takes place in the earlier in the chapter where Brahma has his prayers. Actually, it takes place in the 13th chapter. You know the story where Lord Brahma couldn't understand how this little boy in Vrindavan was actually his master. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so he stole the calves and the boys and hid them, testing Krishna's power. And for a whole year, Krishna expanded himself as the boys and calves. And then Brahma came back for him after a moment of his time, and he noticed that Krishna was still there playing with his boys and calves. And so finally Krishna revealed himself. All of the boys and calves turned into Vishnu forms, and everything was worshipping them. And then Brahma surrendered, bowed down, and offered these beautiful prayers. So in the coda to that, after it happens, and Shukadeva is explaining the significance of it. This verse is there near the end of the chapter 14, text 58, chapter 14 of the 10th canto. And I think you both know this verse. Samashitaye padapallavaplavam Samashitaye padapallavaplavam Mahatpadam punya yasho morare Morare Pabambudi vatsapadam param padam 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 yan vipadam natesham. For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Murari, or the enemy of the Mura demon, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. His goal is Parampadam, or Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. I'll just read a little more of this purport, which is by Ridinanda Maharaj. One who seeks shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna is immediately protected by the Lord. As the Lord promises in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, Aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshiyasyami mashicha. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. By taking shelter of Lord Krishna, one comes under the safest protection. Thus, when the Pandavas took shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, all of them were on the safe side of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Parikshit Maharaj, therefore, felt obliged to think of Krishna in the last days of his life. This is the ideal result of Krishna consciousness. Ante Narayana Smriti. Let me see. No, I'm sorry. This is Srila Prabhupada. This is the first chapter in the purport where he quotes this verse. This is Prabhupada's purport. This is the ideal result of Krishna consciousness, ante Narayana Smriti. If at the time of death one can remember Krishna, one's life is successful. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So these two verses, one about the significance of the holy name, and the other about the safety of the boat of the lotus feet of Krishna, can be meditated on and contemplated during this time, because we're all faced with the imminent threat from this virus, and so we have to take measures. We should try to protect ourselves as much as possible. I'm sure you're all doing what you can, and unfortunately the temple is closed to minimize the possibility of contagion. But it's like everything. When you read the 10th canto of the Krishna book, and you read again and again how Krishna saved the residents of Vrindavan from so many dangers, and you can see when there is, because it's Boma Vrindavan, not Goloka Vrindavan, there are these dangers that come from the demons, and inevitably, or sometimes just like the fire. Forest fire. Several forest fires came up all of a sudden. So you read, what do the Vrijvasis do? They simply cry out to Krishna, please save us. Whether it's the torrents of rain and the hailstones and the lightning coming down from Indra, or the forest fire, or the Putana demon, or the bull demon, all of these demons represent the nature of this material world. At any time, there is, as mentioned here, padam yad vipadam natesham. Every step there's danger. You don't know who expected this to come all of a sudden and upend everyone's life and crash the economy and provide a deathly threat to anyone who's not careful and unfortunately gets catches this virus. So this is the material world. It's like that all the time. But we fall into the illusion of thinking that there's some safety and security in this world. One of the first things that Srila Prabhupada would always emphasize when he began preaching in the West, is the need to remember birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries. The threefold miseries are, this is one of those miseries. The miseries coming from other living entities, although the virus is kind of living and not living, but it's like that. And it sometimes comes suddenly upon you. We're always like that, but we forget. You're driving along on the highway at 75 miles an hour. You have this sense of security because it's always been okay. I've always, but suddenly somebody's texting, and swipes you, and you practically can die or get serious injury at any time. So what's the lesson for devotees? The lesson is that we have to cultivate Krishna consciousness seriously so that we're remembering Krishna at every moment. This is the stage of real security in this world. The body is never secure. It can fall from some disease, it can fall from some accident, some crazy guy. Somebody just came out of his house, he couldn't stand. This has happened in, I think, Thailand or somewhere. He was in quarantine, 14 days inside. He went completely crazy, took off all his clothes, ran outside, found some poor sleeping woman and bit her and killed her. He bit her neck and she died from some old woman sleeping. This is the world we live in, and we have our own homeless people here, So it's not that we should live in a state of fear. The idea is to take shelter of Krishna and transcend the fear and live with constant remembrance of the Lord so that we can be equipoised in happiness and distress. Isn't that the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita? In the second chapter, Krishna has this whole lesson on the soul, and then he begins speaking. Arjuna, he talks about the realized soul, those who are fixed in consciousness, and Arjuna wants to know, well, what is the quality? How do they sit? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they live? And right away you get samadukha sukha. What is it? Dukkeshono vignamana, sukkeshu vigataspaha, vita raga bhaya krodha stitidhi monoruchite. So this dukkeshono vignamana. In the miseries, one's mind is not disturbed. Anudvigna. The whole issue in our lives is the state of our mind. That's what determines our future. It determines our future life, what state our mind is. So all the processes of Krishna consciousness are meant to infuse the mind with Krishna consciousness, and so that we'll become more and more attracted to Krishna and hearing about him, thinking about him, remembering him, serving him. And so our minds will be filled with Krishna. Even if some accident happens, the body gets destroyed, our life will be successful, as mentioned in the first purport. So these are difficult times, but in a sense, they're a blessing. Just like the devotees, they welcome difficulty in the service of the Lord, because it means that they have to take real shelter of the Lord. This is how the devotee sees it. After all, whether virus or no virus, we're all moving toward that losing the body. The body will eventually fall. And so in the time between now and that time, which is a time of transition, the end is for the body, not for the soul. We have to cultivate Krishna consciousness as seriously as possible so that we can successfully lead our lives, and our next life will be most auspicious in a place where we can continue our service to Krishna and hopefully in the spiritual world. So, this samashrita, now the first word here is samashrita, which means complete shelter. He's describing this padapallavaplavam, the Lord's lotus feet like a boat. So why is it a boat? Because we're in an ocean here. The material world is described oftentimes as an ocean or as a forest fire. Samsara dhava nalalida loka tranaya, the spiritual master is saving us from the blazing fire of samsara by pouring down through his mercy the instructions and the method of realizing the instructions on the holy name, and giving us his own example. And when it's compared to an ocean, both of those situations, when you think what's the essence of them, is that we're insecure, is that there's a threat of destruction at every moment. An ocean is roiling with a storm or something. You're very unsteady, insecure. Prabhupada would give the example of his own life, his passage to America. He'd never been in a boat like that, and he got sick, and by Krishna's will, the crossing across the Atlantic was unusually calm, blessing, but it's still very unsteady situation. So, what to speak of a forest fire? So here, Krishna's feet the lotus feet are compared to a boat for crossing this ocean. Punya Shomarari Mahatpadam means the Mahatpadam means the place where the whole Mahatattva rests, the whole creation rests upon his lotus feet, and also the great Mahatmas stay at his lotus feet. Punya Yasha. This is another central principle of Krishna consciousness. Just by chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, one attains spiritual piety, one transforms his life. So that's Punya Yasha. And of course is Marari, the enemy of the Mura demon. Bhavambudir. So Bhavambudir, the ocean of becoming, the ocean of change. It's always changing. No situation is steady. When we're in a very pleasant situation, we should know that will end, and we should not be too attached. And we'll know it in a difficult situation, that will also end, and we'll come back. So what kind of steadiness can we have if we're thinking of Krishna in the happiness and in distress, so that we're not becoming overwhelmed by some pleasant situation, forgetting Krishna, and when there's some danger, we think, oh, I have no shelter, that we can always rely on Krishna for his protection. Bhavambudir Vatsapadam. So Vatsapadam means the place where the calves, hoofprint, the water in the calf's hoofprint, that whole ocean of birth and death that we've been floundering in for millions of lives, shrinks down to the water in the calf's hoofprint. You easily cross over it. And where do we go to? The Param Padam, the supreme abode, Vaikuntha. And then the last line, not for them who have taken shelter of that boat of the lotus feet, is this place, which is Padam Padam Yad Vipadam, the place for all the danger at every step. So we're experiencing that, how it's so dangerous now. You can't even go out, and be careful if someone coughs nearby, and, social distancing and all of these different things. It's an invisible enemy. People are freaked out by this, But devotees can take it, we're also careful, but transcend the anxiety factor, because we take shelter of Krishna's holy name, and in this way take shelter of his lotus feet. And Prabhupada gives the example of in the 18th chapter. Of course, this is another situation that's very dangerous. You're on a battlefield. The whole Bhagavad Gita is spoken on a battlefield, and so Arjuna, he wasn't afraid of dying, but he was afraid of killing his dear teacher and Bhishma Dev and others who he loved. So he was in a quandary that he would suffer sinful reactions. Remember that he spoke about that in the first chapter. So Krishna protects us from that. We should not fear. There's so many beautiful verses. One about that Haridas Thakur talks about. He recites in the Anchal Leela. There was this wonderful discussion. He was there, and Raghunath Das was there, I think, as a teenager, and his parents, his uncle and his father were there, Govardhan and Hiranya Majumdar, and they were talking, they wanted to hear Haridas glorify the holy name, which he was doing. And he was saying things like, even just once chanting, you can become free from birth and death by chanting one holy name. And so there was a Smarta Brahmin there, who had been, I think he was in the employ of the Majumdars, and he disputed that. He said that can't be true, that you can get liberation just by indifferently chanting the holy name. This is the power of the holy name. And so, and if it's not true, I'll cut off your nose, he said, And so this is a great offense against Haridas Thakur. They immediately fired and kicked him out. But they asked Haridas to please explain this. And so he chanted this beautiful verse, and explained it, which I put into a little poem. It says, Anghak sang hadadakilang sakadudeyade vasakalalokasya. Tadanidi vatamila jalading jayachitagam mangalang hare nama. Jagan mangalam means auspicious for the whole universe. So the way he explained it, I put it into this little poem. When the moon is invisible, withered to nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then an ocean of darkness envelops this world, and the timorous fear they might die. But that thick pall of gloom is at once swept away when the first signs of sunrise appear, and the dawning of day gives assurance to all that in truth there's nothing to fear. In a similar way, when illusion holds sway, and his soul has forgotten his Lord, then the darkness of ignorance covers his heart. Sin and suffering are his reward. But as soon as he says Krishna's name even once in a manner that doesn't offend, then his ignorance flees like the darkness at dawn, and his sin and suffering end. So there's nothing to fear, for the sun of the name has appeared with his powers divine. In your heart may that sun, benedictive for all, become fixed and eternally shine. So overcoming fear is a big part of eternity. I think last week you dealt with that subject matter. Shri Shri Gaurnata ki jai, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadraji ki jai, Shri Radha Giridhari ji ki jai. And it's interesting that that main verse, I think you cited, Bayam Dvitiya Abhinaveshitak. So this is one of the first verses that the 9 Yogendras are giving to King Nimi when he questions them. And he wanted to know, what is the ultimate good? How can you achieve the ultimate good? And he starts out by describing how one can overcome fear. Because fear is endemic to the material situation. As soon as one artificially detaches oneself from Krishna, because you can't really, we're intrinsically part and parcel of Krishna, but we forget because we want to be absorbed in the material energy. Bhayam dvitiya abhinaveshitak syad. That fear comes into being by absorbing our mind in the second thing, the dualities of this world, and turning our back on Krishna. Ichadapetasya viparhiyo asmriti. And our position becomes reversed. Instead of being servants of God, we forget God and become attempted masters of this world. And we forget asmriti. And it's all due to Maya, tanmayato, tanmaya, by Krishna's external energy. As soon as we leave the internal energy, then we're conducted by the external energy. And so one has to be intelligent, Buddha, and abhajetam, to worship him again, turn oneself back toward him, and reform ourselves so that we come to our former position. Bhakti aikayation, but it has to be one-pointed bhakti and selfless, without a tinge of material desire. And Gurudeva Tatma, seeing one's spiritual master as life and soul. So this verse is often quoted, Srila Prabhupada would quote it, because that's what the material energy means, is that no matter who we are, or what we are, as soon as we detach ourselves from Krishna, artificially, we forget and we enter into this dreamlike state of attempting to dominate this world, and we're repeatedly frustrated and knocked down and kicked down, and we enter into these 8,400,000 species of life. And every one of them, there's this fearfulness. Prabhupada would often point out, if you see a little bird or you see an animal, they're always in danger, feeling the danger. Some enemy's going to come, I'm going to get eaten. Bird is trying to find something to eat, but he's always got his eyes out. As soon as there's some disturbance, some cat coming, boom, he flies into the tree. And so what to speak on the human life, when we can use our imaginations, and when we can create things that are, horrible, the ugra karma of the nuclear weapons and all other kinds of weapons. So it's a very fearful place. So how to overcome that? First of all, we can have hope of escaping this place. Now we know that in the ultimate end, the pure devotees, they're not even hankering for liberation. Their only wish and only desire is to serve Krishna eternally for his pleasure. And that's the highest state. That automatically means they're liberated. But that liberation isn't the motive. But for us, when we're not pure, that can be an important motivation to keep us serious in devotional service. Because that's one of the hidden blessings, if we need to try to use that word, of situations like this, is that you become very serious. You chant with more sincerity. You pray very deeply and sincerely, because this is our shelter. This is what it means to be a bhakta. So Pariksit Maharaj, he showed that. He was suddenly faced with his death in 7 days. Now what did he do? Did he freak out? Did he try to figure out a way, the counteract the curse? He could have done that. But he saw it as a blessing. I have 7 days. How best to use every minute? Hearing the Bhagavatam. He didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink, doing anything except just hear that Bhagavatam. And so, and he was completely successful. He did it also as an act of mercy, because how was the Bhagavatam going to be manifest? It was all Krishna's arrangement. And so it was manifest by the wonderful speaker Shukadev and the perfect hearer Pariksit, in the whole thing, and the whole Bhagavatam manifest. Because we need that. We needed the Bhagavatam. Krishne Swadamo Pagate Dharma Jnana Devi Saha Karo Nashcha Dishamesha Puranako Danodita. That when Krishna went back to the spiritual world, after installing Yudhishthira on the throne and doing things, killing so many demons, reinstituting Dharma, but he went back. And so then the question is, where does Dharma and Gyan reside now? And so the answer is the Bhagavatam. To that, just like the sun coming to give light to the benighted souls of this age. And so that Lord Chaitanya's movement is based on Bhagavatam. He came to teach the Bhagavatam and personify the Bhagavatam. And his followers, the whole Sandarbhas, based on the expansion on Bhagavat philosophy. And what does Bhagavat philosophy mean? It means Anya Bilashita Shunyam. It means bhakti that has no tinge of contamination from material desire for sense gratification or even liberation. So that's our line, and that's what we should embrace. And while doing all the things necessary to stay safe, also take advantage, if you have more time at home now, to chant more rounds, read together. I wrote down some sites. Of course, dandavats.com, we know, is a very nice site to go to. And we have our own channel. What is it? ISKCON SanDiego. What is it? ISKCON SanDiego Live TV? Something like that. Anyway, you just go to YouTube and you'll have our channel. Mayapur TV. Yeah. Or I say you can just Google Hare Krishna. No, in YouTube, just type it Hare Krishna. All kinds of kirtans and wonderful sites. You can take part in if you're stuck at home. And so there's no need to despair of association. Of course, it's very nice to come together. There's no substitute for it, we know. But because of, we do have the internet, we can still get Sangha and come alive, and it just takes some determination and discipline. Okay, so we go to 7:30, right? So we'll leave 15 minutes. And let's see. Okay. We're going to have some chance to write in some questions or discussion by text. You can text my number at 858-291-9815. That's 858-291-9815. And we'll be able to see. Maybe you can take hold of the phone here. Hare Krishna. But before we have a little time, and there are so many wonderful prayers that our acharyas have written, and many of them are prayers for protection. There's one from Rupa Goswami. I didn't put it in a poem, but I'll give you it. It says, it's about Govardhan Leela. Yagya Banga Rushta Shakra Nunna Ghora Mega Chakra Vrishti Pura Kinna Gopa Vikshanopa Jata Kopa Chipta Sapya Hasta Padna Dharitocha Shaila Sadma Gupta Goshta Raksha Mamta Dadya Pankajaksha. O Lotus-eyed Lord, when you broke up, you stopped the Indra Yagya Banga, you angered Indra, Rishta Shakra, and he sent all these devastating clouds to pour down hail and rain and lightning and all these things. Nunnagoda Megachata Vrishti Pura Kinnagopa, and all the whole coward community was distressed by this storm that suddenly came up. And so when you saw that, you became a little angry at Indra, and you lifted that hill on your left lotus hand. Chipta Sabya Hasta Padma, Dadi Chotla Shaila Sabna, which was a big mountain, but it was also an abode underneath it. And in this way, Gupta Goshta, you protected the coward community. And then the prayer, Raksha Raksha Mam Tadaja Pankaja, oh Lord aside, Lord, please, please protect me in the same way today. So these are some of there's so many prayers in the Bhagavatam. Of course, we have this other prayer by Queen Kunti, which is amazing in her prayers, where this same word, padam padami vibadam, she used the same word. Vipadak santu takshashvat tattva tattva jagad guru bhavatu darshanam yaksara punar bhavadarshanam. Amazingly, after recounting some of the dangers that they went through, she was with her sons, the Pandavas, they were exiled, they escaped from the house of lac, which was set afire, and they had to go in the forest and hide out. There were just demons, Hidimba came, the Rakshasas tried to eat them, and they were saved. Bhima took care of the Rakshasas. So she recounts some of that, but then she says, Vipadak santu takshashvat tattva tattva jagar. O Lord of the universe, let those dangers happen again and again, because by those dangers we will see you again and again. In other words, for the pure devotees, they simply call out to Krishna from the bottom of their heart whenever there's even a hint of danger, knowing that that's their real shelter. So you can see how that intensification of the emotion toward Krishna is actually a blessing. And when you study Krishna's Vrindavan Leela, especially Bhoma Vrindavan Leela, you'll see this one thing after one arrangement Krishna makes one after another to intensify the love and the anxiety for him on the part of the Vrijbasis. Just think of the Kaliya pastime. Here was this, this Kaliya who was kind of a demon. He was saved by his wives, their prayers, and he was purified. But he had polluted the whole area. He had this lake in the Yamuna, and so horrible poison that it was contaminating the air above. The birds would fly and fall in; they would die and fall into the river. So Krishna, fearlessly dove in and started circling around, making a big noise. And Kaliya says, "Who is this? Come to challenge me?" So he attacks Krishna. He's got 100 hoods. You can imagine the frightful dragon, blazing fire coming out of his mouth. And he grabs Krishna in his coils, and Krishna's motionless in there. And meanwhile, all these residents come, there's evil omens, and all the parents and elders come out of the home and the village, and they follow his footprints, and they all come to the bank of the river, and they're wailing and crying and, horrible. They're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about their beloved Krishna. And so for 2 hours, I think he stayed there, something like that, until they were at the point of death from all of this anxiety and fear, and then he breaks out. And he, starts dancing. You know the story, and they're all jubilant, comes out there, the wives come, and so he doesn't kill Kaliya. So this is how Krishna engineers things. Think of it. There's the threats. There's the forest fire. There's the bull. There's Putana, Trinavarta, and Shakatasura, and Vatsasura. There's a whole list of them, and each one of them is a huge threat. And the devotees there are in great anxiety. They're wailing, but their constant response is, Krishna save us, Krishna save us. They only know Krishna, and then he saves them. So this is kind of a demon that's taken over here. This nameless, faceless, invisible demon who's threatening everybody. So what's our response going to be? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. We should chant with more sincerity, more depth of emotion, and take shelter of these prayers. The Bhagavatam is such a wonderful gift. The prayers of Brahma, the prayers of Queen Kunti, Bhishma Dev. Here he is lying on the bed of arrows. And what's his only desire? Let my love be directed toward Krishna. Tribhavanakamanam tamalavanam rabhagadagoda varambarandadhani. And vapalalakukulabatanananjam vijayasakeratarasumena vadya. He said, Tribhavanakamanam, the most beautiful. Krishna is standing right over him. Most beautiful in all the three worlds. Blackish complexion like a tamalchi. His garments shining like the sun. Rabhakata gold of Aramba, and golden like the sun. Varambalang dadhane vapa alaka kolavatana nabjam, a beautiful lotus face encircled by the shiny blackish curls, Vijaya Sakhe, the friend of the victor, the friend of Arjuna. Ratadastume nabhajam, let my attraction, let my love be drawn to him without deviation to anyone else. These prayers are for us. We should also pray like that let our love and our attraction be drawn to Krishna. When I come before the deities every day, and the prayers for each one, and the one for Radha and Krishna is a beautiful prayer. Anyone can chant it from the Stavamala. One of the last verses Rupa Goswami wrote. Pashupala Vedinyanandana Vadametang Maharati Yuvam Bhavatu Panayo Bhave Bhave Bhavatore Vapadham Bhujeshume. O Radha Krishna, children of the best of cowherd men, this single boon I beg from you again and yet again. And all the countless births, my endless sins will make me meet. Let all my love flow toward your luscious, lustrous lotus feet. That's for everybody. Okay, so I don't think we have any questions yet, huh? No discussion? Okay. So if anyone has any questions, now's the time to text us at 858-291-9815. That's 858-291-9815. 858-291-9815. Okay.
So this is a question to you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
We all need it, especially now. I like several points. One is, virus or no virus, we should always remember Krishna, because padam padam vipada. Can you please explain the difference between Vrindavan and Goloka Vrindavan? Should we not have a desire to be liberated? Is it not good? And this is from Dhanavari.
Okay. So, the difference between Bhoma Vrindavan and Goloka Vrindavan. Bhoma means the earthly Vrindavan in India, and Goloka Vrindavan. So, in a very important sense, there's no difference. The great devotees, when they're in Vrindavan, they experience the same kind of ecstasy that when they're in Goloka Vrindavan. But Bhoma Vrindavan, of course, we see the when Krishna was present in the physical Vrindavan, there was demons coming, In other words, there's no demons in Goloka Vrindavan. Prabhupada said sometimes there's a hint of a demon coming so that they can experience that rasa of Krishna protecting them. They'll see a cloud, gopis see a cloud, to think that the bull demons come, But really there's no danger there. And we should want to be liberated. We should want to go back home, back to Godhead. I explained that especially in a neophyte stage, or in not, we haven't yet cleared away all of anarthas, we should very much want to go back to Godhead. We should also want liberation. And therefore, we should be serious. Otherwise, why would Krishna say in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita that one of the elements of knowledge, in verse 8 through 10, I think it is 8 through 11, he gives all this list of elements of knowledge, and one of them is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshanam. To see the fault, or to see the danger of birth, old age, disease, and death. So, I like to give this analogy of that Krishna tries to move us along in the process of devotional service by two things. One is by his attraction, the attraction of his form, his pastimes, qualities, associates, prasadam. Everything about Krishna is attractive, and that should be an impetus where we want to attain love of Godhead. And we can experience even a hint of that pleasure the first time we chant Hare Krishna. So that's how he's attracting us. Krishna is all attractive. That's the meaning of his name. But at the same time, because we're also addicted to the things of this world, trying to enjoy it, we need knowledge. We need understanding of our actual situation here. And that means that we have to be very sober-minded about the dangers of this world and the evils of this world, meaning the sources of misery, which are basically birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries. So therefore, we constantly hear about that through the pages of the Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's books and his lectures, because that's where we're at. In order to break that addiction, we need knowledge, we need faith in Krishna, in the process, and in the devotees, and in the Shastra, of course. And then we have to do those things by which we can cure the disease. Now, when we become a little more purified, the desire for liberation wanes. Because if you're experiencing the pleasure of Krishna consciousness, and your desires for material things are going, your sense of being threatened by the material energy is also waning. This is explained in the third canto in the teachings of Kapila Dev, where he talks about the need for association with sadhus. Prasangam madaram pashamatmana kavayo, that the wise understand that the attraction, the strong attraction and association with material energy, which are like strong ropes, ajaram pasham, the same kind of attraction has to be directed toward the sadhus first, those who are messengers of Krishna, who are medium or media through which we can experience Krishna. And the sadhus are those who are self-controlled, they're tolerant, they're kind, they're peaceful, and they're pure devotees. Mayananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvandi yedudam. So when one associates with them, or who the sadhus, what are they doing? Manashriya katam rishte, they're hearing and chanting, and because the more they're hearing and chanting purely, because their minds are on me, the threefold miseries don't bother them as much. They're able to tolerate because their heart and their mind is flowing toward Krishna. So devotees can experience that also, and therefore, and we should always want to be with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, and we should want to visit Bhoma Vrindavan to experience him there. He's also there equally. But the desire of the greatest devotees is to serve Krishna as he wants. If he wants us to stay here and preach and face all these difficulties, that's okay. That's a very high platform. But the point is that it's not something artificial, and we should be very sober-minded and intelligent about where we're at, and we should want to get out of this miserable place. That's a very important impetus. So from the front, Krishna is attracting us, and from behind, Durga has got her trident of the threefold miseries, pushing us in the right direction to get out. Yeah. Don't delay and don't get distracted. So with all of that, that's the best shot that we have for moving toward going back to Godhead. Okay, any other questions? Oh, good.
There's a few of them, actually.
Good.
Okay, so thank you for the class. We love listening to Prabhu, especially how he spoke as if the temple was filled with devotees. Can Prabhu say again how to overcome fear, especially his reference from the Navayogendras?
Yeah. The main verse, there's several memorable verses there, but the first always quoted about the source of fear. Fear arises when we turn our back on Krishna and we become absorbed in meditating on Krishna's material energy, which is called Dvitiya. It's the second thing. And absorbed in trying to dominate and try to enjoy. Ishada Petasa means literally turning away from him. And the result of that is that we forget, asmriti, we forget ourselves, what we are, we forget Krishna, and we identify with our material body. And our position is reversed. Instead of being servants, we try to become masters artificially. So this is all due to Maya, Maya's energy. Krishna's energy is right there. As soon as we forget Krishna, she's there and she covers our knowledge and she throws us down into the material energy. So the cure for that is obviously to reverse the process. Abhajaitam, to worship him again, bhakti aikayesham, with one-pointed devotional service, and Guru Devatatma, to see as one's very self and worshipable Lord, our spiritual master. So it's important to have that guide. Now, of course, there's more to the whole series of. Let me just give me a second here, and I'll find the reference for you. Because there's a series of verses there that instruct us in this. I'm sorry. Okay, that should do it. Yeah, 11:2:37. So that's the verse I quoted there. Bhayam Dutiya Bhinaveshitaksyan. And I'm going to read one or two more after that because they're all important. And it ends up talking about the chanting of the holy name. That's the important part of it. Okay, so I'm not going to do this whole translation, but the next verse is very interesting because he says, this entanglement in the material world is ultimately like a dream. But because of our intelligence being absorbed in the second thing, it's like a swapna manorata, like a dream or a concoction in the mind, and you just dream out. And on the basis of that dreamlike idea of being separate from Krishna, we perform all kinds of activities that increase our entanglement in this world, fruitive activities. So the intelligent person controls his mind. And how do they do it? The next verse is all about chanting the holy name. Shinvan subadhani vritangapane janmani karmani chayani loke. He's describing there that vritangapani is the name for Krishna, means he who carries the wheel. He's remembering on the wheel, on the battlefield, that he's attacking Bhishma, that he's threatening Bhishma, vritangapani. So he sings these words, he sings these throughout the world. Of course, this is Yogendras, they're sannyasis. Gitani namani tadartakani. And then, evam vatak swapriya namakircha. This verse is a verse that Lord Chaitanya cited, that his spiritual master told him, Ishwapuri, was the essence of the whole Bhagavatam. And it's all about chanting. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one comes to the stage of love of God. Then the devotee is fixed in his vow as an eternal servant of the Lord, and he gradually becomes very much attached to the particular name and form of the Lord. As his heart melts with ecstatic love, he laughs very loudly, cries, and other symptoms are there. So, then what's the result? Then it describes, he sees the whole world as Krishna's body. He sees Krishna everywhere, saturated with Krishna, and therefore he doesn't see anything as separate from Krishna, and therefore he offers his sincere respects to the entire expansion of the Lord's body. In other words, he sees the world as Krishna's external body, and he never feels separation from Krishna. Then comes a very important verse. Bhakti Padeshano Bhavaraktir. This is the third or fourth verse that's often quoted. And this verse describes the experience of the surrendered soul, that it's just like taking a nice feast at the end of a feast day. Three things happen. Tushti, Pushti, and Chodapaya Anugasam. With every bite, you're feeling pleasure, taking a nice prasadam, honoring it. Pushti, nourishment for your body. And Chodapayo, and your hunger is going, meaning that you're becoming more and more detached from the material world. So this corresponds to the experience of bhakti, of the devotion, of the experience of the Lord in one's life, and virakti means detachment from material things. So this is all a very wonderful section of the Bhagavatam. This is the first of the Yogendra's lessons. And then he talks about the different levels of devotees, and then the different avatars. He gives a verse about Lord Chaitanya, Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. It begins here in the second chapter of 11th canto and goes into the third chapter. So 11:2:37 is the verse you're looking for, and you can explore it on your own. Any other question?
Yeah, there's one comment and then
Okay.
okay, so this is from Rajeshwari. Hare Krishna Dravida Prabhu.
Haribol.
So amazed to see your dedication. You are talking like temple room is full with devotees, and you're preaching them from your heart. Thanks for, as usual, energetic kirtan. Okay. Now, Sorry. Okay. Okay. So this is from Dr. Brett from Las Vegas.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. He tuned in last week too. So, when we think of Krishna, we are always speaking of an avatar of a blue figure. Is there a more ineffable form as well? I understand the avatar allows us to imagine him, but I'm wondering, is there also universal imaging of the expression of Krishna? And then he says, P.S. I don't mean I think he's imaginary. I mean just to visualize him in our own minds.
Okay, I think there's a bit of a misconception there. When we speak of Krishna, we hear of Krishna, read of him in the Shastra. That form of Krishna, playing the flute with that slightly bluish, blackish complexion, all of the things that we hear about, the lotus face, lotus eyes, lotus hands, lotus feet. That's the actual eternal form of God. It's not something imagined, it's not something you go beyond. That is the ultimate goal. The name, the form, the qualities and pastimes. When you think about it, how do we know a person? From one person from another. And it turns out to be, the name and the form and the qualities and their activities and their pastimes. So, because Krishna is absolute, that name Krishna is completely Krishna, which is completely inconceivable in our conditioned state. But the great acharyas begin, Srila Prabhupada always emphasis, and we have that wonderful verse, Namachintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnak Shuddho Nityamukto Abhinatvan Nama Namino. And it says, Namachintamani Krishna, that the name of Krishna is like a Chintamani gem. Now what's this, a Chintamani gem is a special spiritual gem, which transforms whatever it touches. The idea is it turns things to gold. Prabhupada said once, it's like philosopher's stone. They have a term in philosophy for that. So, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, and all of the different mellows, all the different relationships that we can experience with Krishna can be realized through chanting the holy name. They're the concentrated rasa that's there in the name. Purnak Shuddho Nityabhakti. It's a complete process. You can achieve all your goals in yoga and everything else just by chanting Hare Krishna. Purnak Shuddho, completely pure, Nityamukto, eternally liberated, not entangled in this world. And why is all of this? Because Abhinatvan Nama Namino, there's no separation, no difference between the name and the named of Krishna. So that goes for his form. Anything, there's one sentence that I read in that first purport that actually has been fixed. Anything directly related to Krishna is Krishna. Just like the deity, everything on the altar, it all has spiritual potency. That's why, in different times, we'll take the flowers and smell the flowers and take the heat in the heat. Because it's been Krishnized. Prabhupada used that term, Krishnized, not Krishnized, Krishnized. By being offered to him. So an ordinary flower that you find on the street becomes spiritualized and you smell it and you become Krishnized, you become attracted. So no, the form is not imaginary, of course. I don't know if you didn't really mean that, but there's nothing beyond it. There's no something in or beyond Krishna that we're aiming for. We can remember that very form, either the very deity on the altar, the pictures, just from the descriptions, detailed descriptions in the Shastra, such as Brahma Samhita. And That's our perfection, to fill our minds with thoughts of Krishna, our words with words of Krishna, sounds of Krishna, our ears certainly with glorification of Krishna. And the perfection of our life is to remember that form and name and qualities and pastimes at every moment, and to dedicate our life, what is it, prana, artha, diya, vacha, life force, life energy, wealth, intelligence, and words in the service of the Lord. And that's how we can go back to Godhead. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So there's the exclamation mark of 3.
Who is it?
Oh, exclamation mark 3.
3 exclamation marks, yeah. Okay.
We love listening to you. We know that everything in this world is part of Krishna. In such case, the coronavirus also should be a part of Krishna. The whole world thinks this virus only as a pandemic disease. Can you give us a different explanation for this catastrophe in terms of Krishna consciousness?
Well, yeah, there's nothing that's separate from Krishna, that's for sure. But when the living entities reject Krishna's internal energy, the spiritual world, which we all have, that's why we're here, then we're subject to the material energy. And the material energy, its purpose is not to give us, eternal bliss, but to really, it's kind of a prison house, reformatory. And therefore, there are, birth, old age, disease, and disease. This is disease. So it's certainly part of Krishna's material energy. And devotees can take a sober lesson from it, that we also should press very hard and refine our spiritual practice, because there's danger at every step, or danger at every breath, may I say. This is how this thing passes. So this is the purpose of the material energy. What is the purpose of this material world? Well, it's to give us a chance to work out our material desires, but to learn the lesson that that's a bankrupt idea, that just produces suffering. Krishna says directly in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yehi sangsbhajita bhoga dukkha yona evate, that the very enjoyment that you feel from the sense gratification of unlimited varieties is the source of your misery, is the source of dukkha. So the wise don't take their pleasure there, because it has a beginning and an end. Where do they take their pleasure? In spiritual. He says it is what does it say? Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma vindatyatmana yat sukham sabbrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. This is before this verse about the sense pleasure of giving misery. So the wise, bhaya sparsheshu asak, they're not attracted to these external sensations from sense gratification. Vindatyatmana yat sukham, they're enjoying spiritual happiness by contacting the Atma, the Supreme Atma, Krishna, the Supreme Soul. Sabbrahma yoga yuktatma, they're linked to the Supreme Soul, Krishna, through the process of bhakti yoga. And therefore, sukham akshayam ashnute, they enjoy unbreakable happiness. You can't have any unbreakable happiness on the material plane. And in that in that Prabhupada quotes this verse, Ramante yogado nante satyananda charatmani iti brahma iti rama padenasu padam brahmamidiyate. The yogis, bhakti yogis, enjoy unlimited happiness. Yogi, Ramante yogan anante, satyananda charatmani, which is real ananda, spiritual happiness. And therefore, one name for the Supreme is Rama. Rama means different meanings. One meaning is the reservoir of all happiness and bliss, and so we can take part in that. And so this virus is simply one of unlimited catastrophes that have occurred over history. Just look at the history of all these wars, and there've been plenty of pandemics and plagues over history. People are leaving their ordinary lives, and suddenly the Black Death comes, and all. In Europe during the Dark Ages, it's happened periodically. It's just the nature of this world. So the sense gratification is a kind of an intoxicant that makes you forget the real nature of this material world and keeps you bound in the cycle of birth and death. So one of the first principles of bhakti is to control the senses. Tasmat tvanduniyanyado niyamya bharatarshava. If we want to overcome lust or kama, which keeps us bound here, then in the beginning we have to control the senses. But not repress them, engage them, dovetail them in Krishna's service. And then we can attain steady mind and determination. Even in the greatest danger, we can still continue our Krishna consciousness and get on the safe side.
Okay, Dhanavari, she said, after you answered her question, a few questions back, she texted back and said, "Thank you so much. You gave us pure nectar, Hare Krishna."
Okay.
And Brett from Vegas said thank you with the pranams.
Oh, the icon.
Yeah, icon.
Special.
Icon pranams.
Okay.
Vaishnav pranams, icon pranams.
Thank you all very much. And tune in next week. Or tune in tomorrow night. We got our class starting at 7:15. And we'll continue with this program as long as we can. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.